Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Time, Space, Compassion podcast for World Suicide Prevention Day. We're coming to you from the home of Dunfermline Athletic Football Club to explore the idea of time, space, compassion and learn about some of the exceptional work being done across Fife. Joining me today are four stellar guests who work in suicide prevention across the area. Eddie Martin is Dunfermline Athletics Mental Health Ambassador. He's also an assist trainer. Maggie Wright is the CEO at Families in Trauma and Recovery, a charity she co-founded with her husband after her own family experienced trauma. Kenny Armour is the area lead for Andy's Man Club in South East Scotland. He's spoken openly about his own poor mental health in the past and was once an active participant at the charity before eventually joining the staff. And Kirsty McElhenney is a community education worker with Fife Council, focusing specifically in the Cowdenbeath area, close to where she grew up. Now, before we start today's episode, we'll understandably cover themes that some of you may find distressing. You'll find a range of useful links in the show notes, and at the end of the episode, I'll give you some key telephone numbers that may be helpful if you are struggling or know someone else who is struggling with their mental health. It's absolutely fantastic to be joined by four phenomenal people working in suicide prevention across Fife. We'll start this Time, Space, Compassion podcast, as we always do, by asking, what does time, space, compassion mean to you? Maggie, if we can start with you, and then we'll hear from Kenny, Eddie, and Kirsty.
For me, time and space is about allowing people to speak no matter what they feel like, and really, really listening to them. And the compassion part is always about trying to have your heart in that conversation. Even when you're listening, even if you're not speaking, just have your heart in it.
For me, very similar, to be honest, is the time and space is just having that safe space to open up and speak, and the time to do it, and just that safe space to get these things off your chest. Compassion is, for me, is the peer support, as people are going through the exact same, so listening to other people is having that experience and just having that safe space to open up and share. But yeah, it's important that we've got spaces that people can come in and share and get things off their chest.
Time, space and compassion for me is all about care and caring. So if you can show someone that you're giving them the time, and then you're spending that time with them, being in that zone with them at that time, giving them the safe space so they can actually open up and speak to you, which is really important. And then the compassion is the compassionate side, that you are being non-judgmental, and you're putting your own opinions to the side and allowing that person to speak.
And for me, I think I agree with what everybody has just already said. It's about having the time that suits the person rather than you, not rushing someone because you only work until 5 o'clock or because you have something else on. It's going at a pace that suits them. Having the space for myself is around about having a space in their community and a place that they feel safe about, again. And the compassion, much like what you just said, Eddie, is me, myself, being compassionate to them, not holding any judgments or any personal opinions, and also a bit about putting myself into it, enough passion about I want to support this person in whatever way they need, rather than helping myself about it.
You mentioned peer support. Let's think about that for a second, Kenny. Tell us a little bit about Andy's Man Club and how peer support is, well, it's central. It is what you're all about.
Yeah, it is all about peer support. Is we come in, and if anybody comes in as they could be the best mental health doctor in the world, as soon as they walk in that door, they're just there as themselves. There's lived experience, and I think that's the most important bit, is you're not speaking to professionals, you're there as just that lived experience. And sometimes people might not have the answers for you, or they might not have that experience, but majority of the time there is somebody in that room that's had that experience, and yeah, it's wonders. It's, for me personally, it's helped me massively, just having that peer support and having people who's been through that experience. May it be a different lifestyle and different upbringing, but they're still going through that same experience.
What about your experiences? Because you bring that peer experience, that lived and living experience into your charity and into your work.
Yeah, peer support actually is the foundation of our organisation. It's actually, based on lived experience and peers. So we want to learn from them so that we can then share that with other people. And we know from experience of dealing with lots of different people that it really helps them just to take the barriers down, not be so scared to talk to people, understand that they're not alone. They're not alone in the world with these feelings. And, then they can have a shared experience with someone rather than feeling this is a top-down approach of somebody telling you what to do. It's actually somebody from the grassroots level saying, I understand.
Do you want to come in on that idea?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Kenny and Mags has said there. For us at Dunfermline Athletic, and through the community work of the Pars Foundation, we do our own walk and talk group, and this walk and talk group has been going on now for over 3 years. And the benefits that we've seen from that is it reduces the loneliness and isolation in people, whereas they are getting to make connections and make new friends, and that's what the peer support is all about. Being non-judgmental, being able to come along and speak at their own pace. There's no forcefulness, there's nothing there. It's just when people want to open up, and they can do. And for me, I think that's really important, and that's the definition of peer support for me, that you're there and connections can be made.
And you're having one of your regular walks during this World Suicide Prevention Week. Just tell us a little bit about how it all works.
What happens is when the walk and talk starts, it starts every Friday morning at 10 a.m, and it's going to be in different locations within the Dunfermline and West Fife and South West Fife areas. What we do is we use all the green spaces in Dunfermline, all the parks, all the lochs and woodlands. What we find is when people get in touch with nature and they can make a connection, it brings them a sense of calm, joy and wonderment. And that's really important. So through Suicide Prevention Day that's happening through the week, is we are leaving from East End Park that particular day. We have different routes. We're quite lucky as Dunfermline has loads of different areas within the stadium that we can walk to. And then one of the most important parts for me is when we finish the walk, the talking can be just as important as the walking. So then we're putting on teas and coffees, and we will be in a designated room within the stadium, and people can come and just talk. And again, the peer support will be there, but it's at their pace, and what they want to speak about is entirely up to themselves.
And I suppose that speaks to the importance. It is time, it is space, and it's compassion, which is, it's a real live example. Just moving to you, Kirsty, tell us about your role in your patch, because your job is a little bit different, but really interesting and of course no less important.
Yeah, so my remit is mental health and wellbeing, and it's all around just creating spaces within people's community to bring people together, whether that is, we have a few walk and talk groups, much like Eddie, it's around food provisions, or it's learners in the community that want to upskill and need to go, not quite ready to make that step to get into the work environment or to get into college, so we'll provide some adult learning. Or it's just signposting people, and they come into a community centre because their wee ones went to nursery and they're wanting to learn how to sew or something, and before you know it, you're helping them get in touch with housing, you're helping them get in touch with support groups. They've made friends, or their wee ones are at the same school as somebody else that we already know, and that's that space where they can come in and feel like they can tell us what it is that they're needing, and we respond to it. We're really lucky in CLD that we are completely led by the people that we work with, so we can tailor programmes that meet their need.
And I suppose one of the things that your work highlights is this phrase, and it's a bit jargony, but we talk about social determinants that can have an impact on somebody's risk of suicide. I'm assuming all of you have seen the impact of that, because suicide is very rarely something that just sits on its own. Other things have driven that.
Yeah, there's lots of things that impact people feeling like they can't really cope with their life. And we saw it particularly in COVID because, people suddenly, were not able to connect with one another. So that teaches you that people need to connect. So once we've had that opportunity, we need to go out and do that and create those spaces. And I think what's lovely about what's happening in Fife is all of us working together here from our different roles to bring this same kind of time, space, compassion message to everyone. But there are many, many things you'll know if somebody loses their job. Even just in my own situation, you know, a mother going into a care home, you know, you're suddenly disconnected from other people and you're thrown into another. It really impacts you, all these things, and we can never underestimate them. So it's about paying attention to that, but also doing something about it positive, which is creating those spaces for people.
I think for us here at Dunfermline Athletic is we have a realisation that suicide does not discriminate. It can affect everyone, and it is everyone's business to try and alleviate those feelings. One of the reasons that we do the workshops and one of the reasons that we do the initiatives here is so that we can put the early prevention and intervention into practice. And you know, it's like the same old story. If you can help one person, then you've done it. And luckily, I know through some of the testimonials we've had and some of the stories and some of the personal involvement I have doing interventions, and you know that it works. And whether or not people would have came forward because they see an attachment with the football club and with the initiatives that we're doing to help promote good mental well-being and mental health, that people do come forward, and it's really good. And we're just hoping that this can develop and it can evolve into something a lot bigger.
I was just going to add on to what's been said there as well. Is, a lot of the work we're doing as well in my role is just raising the conversations around mental health, saying the word mental health, or I'm not coping, saying the word suicide, saying I'm needing some help for my well-being, even within our own staff team as well, is just getting some of the education and our training courses and stuff out to our staff team so that they don't feel pressured or unsure of what to do, so that these conversations are happening in every one of our community centres and at all of our staff teams with all of our communities.
I was going to just follow up on something you were saying, Eddie. You were talking about that suicide doesn't discriminate, which is correct. However, what we do know is that you're 2.5 times more likely to die by suicide if you experience poverty or some form of disadvantage. I know that a lot of the work that you're doing, Kirsty, takes you into communities where things are actually really, really difficult. Now, it's fine for folk like me sitting in an office somewhere battering away on a laptop, but can you give us a sense of just where we are in 2024 and what you see on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, all of our communities that I work with in the Cowdenbeath area, they are the high SIMD areas of deprivation, some of the highest. One of the areas we work in, Benarty, has the second highest rate for childhood poverty in the whole of the Fife area. We're working with families who are really struggling and who have been struggling for a while. And I think what I also see is families who are kind of stuck in a cycle of poverty, and they're stuck in cycles of trauma. So when you're trying to work with some of the people about, you can take some ownership of doing different things or taking control or thinking, what can you do to get yourself better? This is completely new to some of these families. We have a lot of food provisions where people are coming into us and saying, this is the only hot meal I will get this week. We had a young person in who had a baby, and he'd said, this is the first meal I've had since Friday, and he'd been over the weekend. They're having dry foods or something. People are really, really struggling at the moment. The housing crisis, we're dealing with a lot of people, putting them in contact with their welfare support assistants or putting them in contact with the housing officers to say that they're just struggling to get a better quality of housing, or they're in a private rent and they're worried constantly that they're getting another increase in their rent. We're also seeing a lot of people coming in who are in working poverty. We've got parents who have got full-time jobs, taking on a delivery job in the evening just to try and make ends meet. And I think that's everywhere. It's not just relevant to the areas I'm in.
Do you want to pick up?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that from Andy's club point of view is we've seen a big increase in the past year of people with the cost of living. People who are, like myself, who are in a privileged position, we're working, we're making a full-time job, but it's a struggle. It's a struggle to put food on the table, and it is. We've seen a massive increase in that with men walking through and struggling that side. So as much as the poverty people, the people who maybe aren't working full-time or aren't in that position, there's still the other end of it as people are working, or still the cost of living in the UK has obviously increased massively, and it's been a big effect on everyone's mental health and the worries around that. When is the next time you can put food on the table and things? So yeah, we've seen a huge increase on that, and it's obviously it's sad to see, isn't it, to see people coming through because of that.
And the work that you do is with men, and we know from the 2023 data that has just been recently published that the biggest increase in suicide was again men in their middle years. The average age of suicide has dropped again, indicating that it's a problem that's affecting younger people. What are you seeing coming through the doors?
Yeah, we're seeing a big increase. To be honest, in all ages we are seeing, but there's a lot more younger people coming through the doors. Personally, we as Andy's Man Club, we are 18 and over, but we see a lot of need for the younger in that as well. Sadly, we can't help them due to what we do, but there is an increase in need for that as well. But yeah, there's a huge impact on the younger generation, but at the same time, it's also good that more people are coming through the younger generation to talk, because I know looking back, I'm early 30s, but looking back 10 years, I would never speak about things. So people in their 20s now speaking, it's good that people are having that opportunity to speak and get things off their chest. It's just much needed.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kenny. And what I thought that was really important there is the fact that you deal with, people up to a certain age, but a whole family is quite often involved in that. So how do you kind of get around that? How do you provide services for everybody? And that's where, if we can actually educate people around this kind of peer work, that families, even parents, can actually get involved in that, because it helps to give them the education around, what if my family member, what if something happens there? They don't have that training. They've maybe never gone and they're not interested really, because sometimes it's never affected you, so you're not really interested in it. But when it happens, how are you going to deal with that? So this kind of peer training and this peer work that we're doing is really that early intervention work, because what you're doing is you're then empowering those parents and those families to know how to possibly cope with that when maybe their young ones face really traumatic situations. So it is a whole family approach. And I think, Fife Council have done that as well, haven't they? They really address that kind of whole family approach. But like you said, Eddie, the early intervention is actually the most important thing that we can actually do, rather than waiting until we're actually at that crisis point.
Yeah. Sorry, I completely agree. Yeah, we are trying to deal with, or signpost, certainly in our work, seeing how everyone is, not just that one person that's saying I'm struggling. Okay, well, we're saying how, who's in your household, how many children have you got, here's some information on these ones, here's some information for yourself. Or some of the people I've worked with in the past as well, it's been a young person, one of their friends who've taken their life, and they're still dealing with that themselves. Could I have done anything differently? I'm not ready, or I'm not in a place to really speak about it, but they'll come in and have gentle conversations, and it's everyone has a connection to someone.
I think as well that there's still a lot of work to be done now. If you look at the new figures for 2023, males are 3 times more likely to take their own lives by suicide than females. So that just shows you that we do have to take the work that we're doing and try and help more. The thing for us is having an upstream approach, whereas through early prevention and intervention, using that upstream approach, that we can, put the barriers in there so they're not falling through the trap. I don't know if that's the right thing to say or not, but it's all about trying to understand that the sooner and the quicker that you can provide that intervention, or that you can provide that help, then, it can only be good.
Just thinking back to the idea of time, space, compassion, and we've obviously honed in a little bit in this conversation about men in the last few minutes. What do we need to do to get to those men? Because you're talking about being upstream, talking about early intervention, trying to make sure that you stop a problem before it becomes a problem. But I think you said, Maggie, sometimes it's getting people's interest or awareness before it happens. Once it happens, you're involved. How can we reach out to people? How can we change the dial on that to create that time and space and compassion for men?
One of the things that I would say is you have to actually go out there and work in the communities. You have to go and speak to people. All this work that we're doing here, social media can be used as an absolutely powerful thing, because lots of people are sitting on social media. They might never come out their house, but they will see social media. So we have to look at all the avenues. It's not just one thing will fix it. It's a massive variety. And we have to go in the communities and we have to talk to people and be honest. And that means some people have to be quite brave about facing different situations and going and talking to people about them. And that takes a lot of courage, you know, to ask people to do that, because it puts them in a vulnerable position. But, you know, once they're in a better place, sometimes they're the people that can actually go out and speak to communities. But it's a massive amount of work, but it can be done because there's more awareness now than there was. So I don't get, you know, too upset that we have got a massive amount to do. We do know there is, but as long as we're all on board with that, then we can use the channels that are there.
I think just that awareness is amazing, and working together, as you say, Fife, we do work together really well. And I know, like Eddie, we were speaking, and a Monday we've got Andy's Man Club, but we signpost people for a Friday for their walk and talks, and he says it works well. And likewise, in talking about social media, we one of the volunteers at Cow and Beef put a simple post out last week. If you see this post, please like and share it. And it reached 450,000 people within 5 days, and it was the most simplest post ever, but it worked, and it got, as I say, that was over 450,000 people. It was just absolutely unbelievable. So sometimes just keeping it to basics, but just getting that awareness out there and reaching as many more people as we can is the most important bit. I know, like the Pars Foundation, Andy's Man Club, we work together well. We've done awareness days within the stadium at matches, and there's 4,000 people finding out about Andy's Man Club straight away. So as much as that's the men finding out, there's also women involved as well. So that's where, like, as we all work together, we can signpost. One thing is our volunteers at Andy's Man Club, we've done training out with it. We've had menopause in, we've had alcohol groups in, learning about that. So the males are learning about that to help at home with situations. Because quite often we'll find that as men are walking through the door to get things off their chest, but it might be that their son's struggling or it's their wife that's struggling, but they're coming in. So for us learning about that, it's all about learning as well, and hopefully discouraging and that, and going forward it's learning about that and helping people.
Yes, I totally agree. The thing for me, and I think is really important, is that we can break down the barriers, because suicide is still a taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it. It's still seen as a dirty word, probably. So it's all about breaking down the barriers, and it's also about trying to take away the reality of stigma and discrimination that's associated with it as well. So, you know, people have got the stigma to it. That's their perceptions. That's what they think about it. That's the stereotype towards it, and then their behaviours could be how they don't want to speak about it. They want to avoid it. They don't want to see the situation, and that's the discrimination that goes towards that as well. So it's all about trying to find that balance, trying to find how we can break down the barriers, remove the reality of stigma and discrimination, and try and normalise it. And we're making really, really good, vast inroads. We're not there yet, as the figures show, but if we can keep on trying amongst ourselves, working collaboratively together, which we all do, then I think that we're on the right path.
Everything that's been said, like, we are in a really unique position in CLD that we can go into a lot of the places in our communities where they are. Like, we had a young person who took their life out in one of the communities in Kelty, and their friends were struggling, and the pub landlady got in touch with me and said, can we do something? But we cannot get these lads up to a community centre. We can't get them to go to Andy's Man Club. So we went to the pub on a Tuesday night and offered just myself and some leaflets and some signposting and some chatting with them about what is it that you're needing. And really fortunate that Kelty actually now has Andy's Man Club in. And we have our food provisions where we invite lots of different charities and organisations. So we're bringing it to the people. They're there. They're not at a stage where they're going to go to somewhere. They're not going to go through that door yet. So we'll invite people into them. And we will have things out on the table that have the word suicide on them to try and break down some of that stigma and say, we've actually got a safe room booked. We have loads of staff who are mental health first aid trained. Do you need that supporting just now?
Just reflecting on different perspectives here, because I suppose you're all coming at it from a slightly different angle. You're trying to go to people where they are. Others are trying to bring people in towards them. When we think about how you're all working together, because you're all fitting this jigsaw puzzle slightly differently, tell us a little bit about, I don't know who wants to go with this, but tell us a little bit about the Fife Suicide Prevention Communications Delivery Group, if I've got that. Everybody's nodding at me, which is good. I've managed, and I haven't got that written down in front of me. But tell us a little bit about just how the group works, and you know, because you've all worked together, you all know each other, and you know, how does that play out?
So we meet quite regular on Teams, and we have face-to-face as well, so it's just a number of different people. There could be up to 15 different organisations from Fife, if not more sometimes, and yeah, we all just have a little bit of say and bringing stuff together, but at that same time as we're all working together, so we're learning about each other. So if as Andy's man club, if we've got somebody that's in trouble with somewhere else, we know through that group that we've had the communications. We've obviously this year we're doing a couple of events and different things. There's a walks and talks that Eddie's talked about, and Kirsty's doing one, and Andy's man club are doing one as well. So we're all coming together to support each other in that sense. And we've tried to reach the whole of Fife as well. So we've got events in Cooper, we've got ones in Dunfermline, Cowdenbeath, Kirkcaldy. So we're mixing in and amongst the areas as well. But I think the most important bit is we meet regular and we're getting together and having the ideas from all walks of life. We all bring something different to the table, I would say.
Yeah, and what I love about the group actually, the information that's going to be put out to the public is actually run past us as organisations and individuals first. So we can actually, every one of us has a different perspective. So sometimes somebody will say, oh, have you thought about that image there? It may not be good in this setting, or that could actually put, you know, thoughts into people's head about this situation. So we're all able to put our input into it. So before anything actually is sent out, any literature, any messages, any, you know, marketing material, etc., we've all had an input into that. And all of these organisations that are involved have all had people with lived experience. So you're getting real grassroots stuff going out and actually being publicised, and it's been checked by people. And what I love is that they listen. They actually do listen to us, because there's times where we've put stuff back and said, we're not really sure about this. Could we have you to have a look at that again? And they've respected that, changed that. And that's why I think it's working fantastically well, because they're working with members of the community and organisations who are actually there in the grassroots.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things I've got from it is the connections with other people who are doing the same job. This is a hard job. Some days you're really meeting people who are really struggling, and that impacts you personally. But then you've got one of the Suicide Prevention Communication Delivery Group meetings coming up, and you can listen to what other people are doing and think, I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought about doing this, or I've got people's contact details. I can reach out to someone. I can give Eddie a wee message and say, can we meet up? We've met up and had a wee coffee about a couple of ideas we've had. Or I've reached out and said to Kenny, is there any way you could pass this message on to a couple of the volunteers in the Cowdenbeath area? That for me has been hugely, hugely helpful.
Yeah, the thing I love about the group, and we've spoke about it quite a lot this morning, is I feel it's a peer support group as well. It's a peer support group for all of us, whether it be looking forward and planning and implementing the campaigns that we're doing. Everybody listens to everybody else's opinions, which is really good. And the most important part for me is it's the best example I've seen for partnership working, and it really makes a difference for all our communities, and most importantly, making our communities suicide safe.
Brilliant. I'm amen to that. I'm going to ask one last question of everybody to go around the table. So the World Suicide Prevention Day theme for 2024 to 2026 for the next 3 years is changing the narrative, which I'm personally not entirely sure that's necessarily works for everybody out there, because it feels a bit jargony. So I'm hoping you can help me kind of demystify that and explain in your own words just what you are doing to change the way in which we talk about suicide.
For me, it's trying to normalise how people think, and taking away the taboo and the stigma and discrimination that is attached to it as well. the more that we can get people to talk about it, the more we can normalise it, that is definitely going to change the narrative. And if we can do that and make an impact into our local communities, then we know that we've done something.
For me, changing the narrative is, it's not someone else's job. Moving away from that, oh, that's their job, they deal with that. Or people thinking, I'm not mental health trained, I'm not a mental health nurse, I can't do anything. I think it's about empowering our communities to say what they can do if they have someone in their family, themselves, or other people, or somebody at your work that you pass and you think, you know, they're not looking that great. Empowering them enough to say, are you okay? And to have an open conversation and feel backed up by saying, well, actually, I know things that are going on in my community that help people's mental health and well-being, because we are now a place that's always talking about it.
For me, it's quite similar. It's about normalising things because, as I mentioned before when we were chatting, these are normal feelings that sometimes are there due to abnormal events. And plenty of people have had these kind of feelings. So when we normalise it, it allows the space to actually talk about it. And then we realise we're not alone. There's actually many, many people, probably in a room that you're sitting with, there will be loads of people who have actually had these feelings. So it is about normalising it and creating space for that dialogue.
Just agree with everyone else. I think we say normalising it in conversation, but I think a lot of it's learning it as well, because as Maggie just says, we all have that feelings, we all go through, even if it is somebody's having a low day, that's mental health, it's part and parcel. So it's to bring in that and learning about it. And I think it's important the way we move forward is we bring it into everyday life. So it may be if somebody's going out to go with their friend for a coffee or a walk, that's part and parts peer support really, because they are having that connection, they're getting them outside. So I think just normalising that in the conversation, and that is mental health and it's helping people go forward, is the most important bit. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate it. Sometimes it's just bringing it back down to simpler terms and just normalising it in everyday conversation rather than just in certain scenarios. So I think going forward it's looking good, to be honest, especially in the Fife area.
My enormous thanks to Eddie Martin and everyone at Dunfermline Athletic Football Club for hosting us today. To Maggie Wright from Families in Trauma and Recovery, Kenny Armour from Andy's Man Club, and Fife Council Community Education Worker Kirsty McElhenney for joining us at East End Park. Of course, thank you to you for listening to Time, Space, Compassion from Suicide Prevention Scotland for World Suicide Prevention Day 2024. And please do check out the Suicide Prevention Scotland and United to Prevent Suicide channels for lots of brilliant content from people working to prevent suicide across the country. You can learn about how they are changing the narrative. Finally, if you or someone you know is struggling with their mental health or are feeling suicidal, please do not hesitate to ask for help. You can contact your GP or NHS 24 on 111. The Samaritans are available on 116 123, or you can call Breathing Space on 0800 83 85 87. From all of us, take care.